So it's bad for patients and bad for the taxpayer. And frankly, after 14 years of Conservative government promising to reform the NHS dentistry contract back in 2010, what we got today was too little too late.
We're streeting. And finally, Spanish farmers have been blocking major roads in Spain with tractors and burning tyres, protesting against European Union bureaucracy and market competition. More than a dozen major roads were blocked this morning as convoys of tractors converged on Barcelona to confront their local authorities. The farmers want better prices for their produce, less red tape and protection against cheap imports. It's the latest sign of growing anger across Europe after similar protests took place in Germany, France and Belgium in recent weeks. For the very latest stories, do sign up for GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
This news has just landed. It is alleged that a refugee from Afghanistan who lied his way through our asylum system is a Russian spy who worked for the Foreign Office, accessed British military and intelligence secrets, met the now King Charles and the then Prime Minister David Cameron. He was reportedly stripped of British citizenship in 2019 after MI5 claimed he was working for Russian secret services. These allegations, if true, highlight how foreign actors can use and abuse our asylum system to plant spies right at the heart of Britain. He reportedly claimed that he was fleeing the Taliban and had come straight from Afghanistan despite living in Russia for years. Apparently, he went on to work for GCHQ, MI6, the Ministry of Defence, the Home Office. But is it any wonder when you consider that a skint asylum seeker with a potentially fatal injury is currently outwitting our Metropolitan Police? Abdul Azidi is still at large. Now, this is a sorry tale about the decline of Britain. Take a look at this CCTV footage from him wandering around Tesco's, OK? What does it say about Britain that a man with half of his face hanging off due to what looks like chemical burns can just stroll around and nobody bats an eyelid? Like it's normal, isn't it? But the big story here is Britain's deportation scandal. Even if we caught Abdul Azidi tomorrow, and even if he was found guilty of the horrific crimes that he's been accused of, as it currently stands, we still couldn't deport him afterwards. He's failed an asylum bid twice, he's committed a sexual offence, he stayed in Britain and went on to allegedly try to kill his ex-partner with acid and harm children. But let's just add him to the list, shall we? The Reading jihadi who murdered 3 people during a knife rampage, Khairi Sadallah, had his deportation dropped a year before his attack. Ernesto Elliott was on a deportation flight. A load of lovey celebs and supposedly some Labour politicians as well protested against the flight. He stayed in Britain and then went on to commit a murder. We need to deport foreign criminals before they have the chance to commit more crimes. Now, Tory MP for Redditch and Deputy Party Chair Rachel McLean put forward a debate in Parliament on this today. Now, I actually caught up with Mrs McLean. She said that allowing criminal asylum seekers and immigrants to stay in Britain is tearing this country apart.
We're talking about something very precious. That's our sense of nationhood, our precious democracy, and that's an inheritance that we've had from previous generations who fought for this country and have fought for the peace that we enjoy at home. And when we have allowed people to come in and literally kill us, we have been literally killing ourselves with kindness in some cases.
She says there's concerns that institutions like the Church of England provide a massive loophole for criminal asylum seekers to stay in Britain.
And I think the one that is really concerning is the one about conversion to Christianity, because it is right that we have a system that allows people who have a well-founded fear of persecution. If they are sent back to that country, they would be tortured and their lives would be in danger. And this is part of international law and it's something that we're part of. However, it's not true to say that there aren't loopholes in that system.
She went on, quite unsurprisingly, to say that she thinks things will be worse under Labour.
They have got the wrong priorities and they've always sided with the victims, with the people committing the crimes rather than the victims of those crimes. They put those foreign national offenders above our own citizens, and that's why I believe they are a risk to our national security.
Obviously, Labour would deny that, but former Home Secretary Priti Patel has now weighed in, explaining how victims have to live through the trauma of being abused by foreign national offenders.
Traumatised, and you know what? They're even more traumatised. They relive that trauma all over again. When they see members of Parliament, celebrities, the media, BBC so-called expert witnesses, as exposed by the Mail on Sunday this weekend, campaigners and lawyers backing the rights of criminals over them.
Well, there is a heck of a lot to go out there, and here to do it with me are my wonderful panel. And tonight I am joined by senior political correspondent at The Express, Christy Cowgie. I've also got businessman and activist Adam Brooks and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Look, Adam, I'll start with you. I mean, foreign powers, if this story is true, are now taking the absolute mick to the point where they can plant fake asylum seekers right at the heart of our intelligence.
It just shows how ridiculous our Home Office and our immigration system is. We've allowed gangsters, rapists, terrorists, paedophiles, and God knows what else into this country. We don't know where half of them are, what their background is. The public is at risk. The government's job is to protect its citizens, and they're putting us at risk. Now we've got spies. This is like a bad version of a Carry On movie. This really is serious, and I believe it's a national emergency.
Yeah, Christy, I'll throw it over to you and just read out the introduction to this story, which is in the Times, OK? An alleged Russian spy lied to gain asylum in the UK before he worked for the Foreign Office, accessed British military and intelligence secrets and met with the future king. I mean, it's bingo, isn't it, at this point?
Yeah, I mean, he's lived a life that many British citizens would like to, and we don't get a look in, right? And this isn't just a civil service failure and an asylum failure, and my goodness, we've seen more than enough of those for a lifetime over the last few years. It's also an intelligence failure. I think it's astonishing, one line from the article, that he claimed that he'd come directly from Afghanistan, even though he'd lived for Russia in 6 years. So this is a major failure by our intelligence services, who are meant to keep us safe, a failure by the Border Force, who are meant to keep us safe, and a failure by the civil service, who are supposed to be in charge of all of this. It is a disgrace, and we keep seeing it. It's a government failure, it's a legal failure, and the whole thing should make everybody furious.
Rebecca, the smuggler who he employed, right, supposedly, allegedly, to get into Britain, obtained him a fake Russian passport and bought a Caribbean holiday package for him. He then transited through Heathrow, and instead of boarding his connecting flight, he handed himself into immigration officials in London and claimed asylum, saying he'd come directly from Afghanistan. We are there for the taking, aren't we?
I mean, I would argue that also a Russian passport shouldn't necessarily have helped you to get a job in the Secret Service here, because we're not besties with them right now. But this specific case is a failure from MI6. This is a failure of policing, a failure of background checks. Like, it's honestly, harder, apparently, to get into a Wetherspoons with a fake ID than it is to get into MI6. That is not necessarily the suggestion that our immigration system... I mean, I think our immigration system has a lot of problems under the current Tory government. However, I think to suggest that this is consistent with that, this is a very specific, very high-level case.
It is very high level, but, I mean, surely the Russians here, again, if this is true, are absolutely rubbing their hands with glee. And I just think, Adam, it raises serious questions about whether or not nefarious foreign actors seriously think that they can just plant someone in Britain. I mean, what does that say about, the idea that ISIS could do the same thing?
How many people have come from Iran and are in this country that we don't know about? Saying they're from another country and they've got ulterior motives.
But I suppose the problem with that is, if I was a woman living in Iran right now who had been an outspoken feminist who believes in a woman's right to choose, I would be put to death.
1 second.
So I would need to be able to come to somewhere else.
How many women do you see on those boats? Because I never see any.
Well, for Iran, generally speaking, is not the main feeder for the boats, and certainly everybody's consistent issue with the boats is men who are coming not from Iran. But what I'm saying is you have to have a robust policy where people who are unquestionably going to be political prisoners or going to be abused or put to death have to still be able to come.
We've got fake Christians, fake gay men. They're using every loophole in the book to get into this country, and they're getting away with it.
But how do you maintain... I agree, I don't think it's an ideal system, but how do you maintain a world in which real gay men can come here and real Christians can come here and real women can come here?
I think that is the problem that the left have to confront, because there are clearly a lot of fakers taking the mick and abusing the asylum system, right? Now, if many people are going to start turning around and going, the only way to do this, or to secure our borders, to make sure we're safe, is to not accept any, country, then that is going to lead to harming actual asylum seekers, right? But the people who will shout and scream the most are the sort of left-wingers, the sort of Labour MPs who sign letters to stop deportations of foreign national criminals who then stay on and commit further crimes. They are contributing to an environment in which the British public are getting sick of the whole system.
But arguably, I'm one of those people. I'm a bleeding-hearted lefty who would not like planes to take off to Rwanda. And I think, personally, I feel that there are things that can be done internally to make the country more robust against people who come here as bad actors,
Labour are not
while
gonna do that,
maintaining...
are they?
This is so lazy to be like, Labour won't. We don't know what Labour are going to do. They haven't had a chance.
Just interject on this, because the thing that we could presumably do domestically is actually be in control of our own laws. When people decide that somebody needs to be deported, that we deport them.
No,
and we can't, because at the moment,
Patrick, because what will happen when somebody like that, when a bloody alkaline attack guy got deported, do you really think they're going to detain him and make him serve time for what he did? Of course they're not.
Deport him.
We shouldn't deport him. We should stay here and serve a sentence.
Let's have it right. Labour MPs will probably petition to stop him being deported.
I would petition to stop him from being deported because I want anybody who commits a crime here to serve time for that crime.
Let's just row back a bit.
Not get off a plane and do whatever they want when they get there.
Let's just row back a bit here. So let's just say that we currently have a bloke with what appear to be chemical burns on his face who is alleged to have committed this alkaline attack on a woman and children, who has failed his asylum claim twice, been done for a sexual offence and quite possibly lied about a Christian faith in order to create an asylum claim whilst in this country. Yeah. And you wouldn't deport him?
He should be in prison in this country. I do not want him getting off a plane and walking free when he gets back. And that is what will consistently happen.
Do you know why he hasn't been... Do you know why someone hasn't rung up and said, I've seen a guy with a burn all over his face? Because they would be accused of being racist.
That's not why.
If I called... You know, if I put on Twitter that I've seen a man with burns on his face of Asian descent, I would be called racist for...
No, you wouldn't. That's ridiculous. They are asking people to call.
We've got Rebecca here who's saying that she would campaign to not have this man deported.
So that he serves time.
I don't understand the point of an asylum system that once you've been rejected once, you're then, allowed to stay in the country and reapply as many times as you want until you're finally accepted. Firstly, you should have gone immediately. Secondly, how many illegal migrants are we taking in every year? We don't have enough prison space as it is. That's why probably the guy involved in the Clapham attack got a suspended sentence for his sexual assault rather than an actual prison sentence, because we don't have the space. Imagine having to lock up tens of thousands of more. You'd be more prison than country at that point.
Yeah, quite. We are off to an absolute flyer tonight. If you are just joining us, this is the breaking news that you'll be able to see on the bottom of your screens if you're watching us on telly or on YouTube, which again is that a suspected Russian spy worked for MI6 in the Foreign Office. That suspected spy is allegedly a refugee from Afghanistan. He went on to meet David Cameron, Gordon Brown, the future king, so who is now our king, and Prince William, and supposedly essentially lied his way through, worked for GCHQ, MI6, and had full access to our military intelligence and Secret Service intelligence as well. We stripped him of his citizenship in 2019 after we thought he was working for the Russian Secret Service. We are absolutely there for the taking, but there's still plenty more to come here on Patrick Christys tonight. A heck of a lot to get through. But first, it is time for this, because you can grab a chance to win £18,000 in cold hard cash in our Great British giveaway. Here's all the details you need to enter.
This is your chance to win £18,000 cash in our very latest Great British giveaway. Cash to spend on anything you like. That's like having an extra £1,500 in your bank account each month for a whole year. What would you use that for?
Well, congratulations, you've won £10,000.
Oh my God, that's unbelievable. That's brilliant news.
For another chance to win £18,000 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB02 PO Box 8690, Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday, the 23rd of February. Good luck.
Good luck indeed. Now, still to come, there's yet another breaking development on Keir Starmer's £28 billion Green Pledge. Could a Labour government actually bankrupt this country? We've got Redwall Rottweiler Lee Anderson. He's got his own strong opinions on climate policy, hasn't he? He's live in the studio. He joins us very, very soon. Next, though, Is it ever acceptable to ban a protest? Well, Suella Braverman says yes. Activist Peter Tatchell is going head-to-head with the former aide to Margaret Thatcher, Niall Gardner. That's next. And I also just want to mention to you as well, something I've got coming a little bit later on in the show. I sat down and spoke to the mother of Barnaby Webber, who was very sadly one of those victims of that depraved Nottingham attacker. She is talking out because apparently we could still be paying this guy's benefits whilst he's in a secure mental hospital and could end up coming out with as much as £150,000 worth of taxpayers' cash in his back pocket. It's an absolute disgrace. She doesn't hold back. This is Patrick Christys tonight, and we're only on GB News.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Elon Musk has announced that the first patients to receive a groundbreaking brain implant from Neuralink is recovering well.
This is all a bit odd. The product, called Telepathy, uses a robot to surgically place a computer chip in a region of the brain that controls movement.
Yes, Elon Musk says that the first goal is to enable people to control a phone or a computer just by thinking. He says that initial tests show promising signs of brain activity, meaning that patients with paralysis could one day overcome their conditions.
Not sure about this one. Joining us to discuss this breakthrough is applied futurist Tom Cheesewright. Tom, this sounds, well, slightly terrifying.
I certainly think a lot of people will be thinking this is something out of a sci-fi horror rather than reality. But this is a technology that's been a long time coming. We've been developing direct brain-computer interfaces for a long time, mostly for the sort of therapeutic reasons that are the initial goal, at least, of Elon Musk's Neuralink, to allow people who are perhaps quadriplegic to have direct control via their brains of initially a smartphone and maybe ultimately artificial limbs or a wheelchair.
It does seem fascinating how quickly this technology is moving on. I saw demonstrations perhaps a year or two ago of people playing a very simple Pong game just by thinking, moving sort of one line on a screen up and down. This seems like potentially there has been a breakthrough that means far more complex things can be controlled just by thinking.
Well, there's lots of different aspects to this technology. The initial attempts to interface with the brain used actually quite thick prongs almost that went into the brain, and they were quite solid, and so if the brain moved, they could potentially cause damage.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Loads on tonight. It's time now, though, for our head-to-head. Former Home Secretary Suella Braverman is back, and she has called for new laws allowing ministers to ban protests. She's criticised police for failing to tackle hate-filled pro-Palestinian marches. Braverman says that Home Secretaries should be able to ban those hate-filled and disruptive marches outright, to outlaw any expression of support for terrorism and to make it easier to prosecute anti-Semitic chants, such as From the River to the Sea. But tonight I am asking, is it ever justifiable to ban the protests, all right? And tonight I am joined by activist and campaigner Peter Tatchell and the former aide to Margaret Thatcher. Of course, I've got Niall Gardner. Look, Niall, I'll start with you. Should we be banning hate marches?
Patrick, thanks very much for having me on the show today. And yes, absolutely, we should be banning these hate marches. Suella Braverman is 100% right. These marches that we've seen by pro-Hamas mobs on the streets of London over the course of the last few months, absolutely unacceptable, really. These are hate marches filled with anti-Semitism, filled with menacing, threatening language towards Jews, support for genocide, support for terrorist organizations. These should not be allowed on the streets of London. This is not a free speech issue. This is a matter of dealing with pro-terrorist mobs and groups who pose a fundamental threat, I think, to British security, and their hate speech should not be tolerated on the streets of London.
Peter, your views?
Well, I can assure you that is absolutely factually incorrect. The pro-Palestinian marchers have called for a ceasefire and humanitarian aid to civilians in Gaza. They have not supported Hamas. They have not promoted terrorism. They have not said a single thing. They have not said a thing against Jewish people.
People have been arrested for this.
Sorry?
Right? You cannot ignore this. I'm sorry. I am not... You started that by saying it's factually incorrect. OK? I'm not going to have you come here and lie. People have been arrested for showing support for Hamas, for flagrant anti-Semitism, for having things like swastikas in the Jewish colours and all of this. You have seen that. In fact, Peter, you've marched at these protests, haven't you?
Absolutely. And out of the million-plus people who've been marching in the last few weeks, there have been a tiny number of people who have been rightfully arrested. But that is not a reason to say that the march is a hate march. They are not hate marches. They're for a ceasefire and civilian aid.
So they just happen to attract hateful people, Peter?
No, you cannot judge the whole marches on the basis of what a tiny minority has done. Just because a handful of people drive cars recklessly, we don't demonise all car drivers. It's the same with this march. I have been on those marches. I've never seen it or heard a single person express support for Hamas
Peter,
or terrorism.
If you've not seen or heard that, you must be blind and deaf.
No, I haven't seen it, but I accept that there are a tiny minority who have done that.
To that, because there's so much nonsense coming from Peter here. Completely divorced from reality. Frankly, I think, Peter, you're living in the twilight zone if you think that you're not witnessing huge amounts of hatred and anti-Semitism on the streets of London. There should be zero tolerance for this, actually. These are not friendly, peaceful marches. They are spreading hate, fear and intimidation, which is why so many British Jews are afraid to go into central London over the weekends, actually, in order to avoid these hate-filled mobs. So it's an appalling situation where you have the Cenotaph War Memorial being cordoned off in order to protect it from these violent, hate-filled protests. Churchill's statue has to be protected. This is a terrible state of affairs, unacceptable, and the British government should be dealing with this very, very severely.
Peter, you're shaking your head there, but I mean, all of that has happened.
I mean, it's absolutely factually untrue. The marchers never intended to do anything to the Cenotaph or the Churchill statue. The marchers have been, by the police's own acknowledgement, 99% peaceful. And the police themselves say that the vast majority of people, we're talking about 99.9% of people, committed no offences, stirred no hate, there was no anti-Jewish sentiment. And I marched with Jewish people on those Palatine marches. Those Jews were welcome and they were accepted and embraced.
All right.
They shared the same concern.
Let's just have a look at that, Peter. That is a flag of jihad, and you know who else carried that flag? Usman Khan, the bloke who was responsible for the Fishmongers Hall attack. So there you go.
I agree. There were some instances.
Excuse me,
but
Peter,
they were tiny.
Marching alongside them. Look at it. Free Palestine. Free Gaza. Oh, look at that. We'll just wander along with the bloke who's waving the flag of jihad, Peter.
Those flags are wrong, but only a tiny number of people held them.
How many flags of jihad, Peter, do you need before it becomes unacceptable to march at something?
You cannot ban a whole march on the basis of the behaviour of a handful.
Just one flag.
If that was the case, we would have banned the suffragettes. We would have banned the Black Lives Matter movement in America.
That's ridiculous. Peter, comparing these these hate mobs to the suffragettes is just incredibly insulting towards the suffragettes, frankly. These Islamist mobs have no respect, of course, for the British people. They have no respect for British history, which is why you have to have these memorials protected from them. It's a damning indictment of what these marches are all about, actually. And they're fundamentally un-British, actually. They're anti-British. They should have no place in British society at all.
Peter, can I just ask, if you wore that tie in Gaza, what would happen?
That's a different issue. I have been stridently.
No, it's not.
I have been longer than you or anyone.
If you wore that rainbow-coloured tie in Gaza, what would happen to you, Peter?
Longer than you or your other interviewee, I've been campaigning against Hamas and against Islamism. I've been beaten up by Islamists for taking a stand for human rights in Palestine and other places where Muslim-majority countries rule. I do not, therefore, believe that it's right to damn me and others who also condemn Islamism and terrorism to damn us as hate mongers. We're not hate mongers.
I'm not calling you a hate monger. I'm just wondering what would happen to you if you wore a rainbow-coloured tie out and about in Gaza.
Well, of course, you'd end up being arrested, tortured and possibly killed.
Right.
And unlike other people, I've actually defended LGBT plus Palestinian people and helped get some of them out of prison in Palestine. I do the action, others use mere words.
Right, OK. All right, Niall, I just do put it to you. If you're all for banning these marches, what happens when you want to take to the streets about something that you really care about and you feel passionately about, and then a serving Home Secretary at that time decides that they want to ban that? Presumably you'd be miffed. You just want to ban it because this is an issue that you don't agree with?
This is not a free speech issue at all. It's about really individuals walking on the streets of London who are supporting terrorist movements, some of them calling for genocide. And there have been reports that former Hamas leaders have actually been involved in some of these marches. I don't know why Peter is marching alongside these people, actually. So this is not a free speech issue. It's about standing up for law and order, standing up against supporters of terror who should not be allowed to roam around freely on the streets of London.
Niall, the march theme was a ceasefire and humanitarian aid. It was to protect and defend all Jews and all Arabs in Israel.
That's ridiculous.
I'll tell you what, here's a clip. Here's a clip. So the theme of this was, what was it? A ceasefire and to protect all Jews and everything. Let's just play the clip. So, Yemen, make us proud, turn another ship around. Peter, that is
I absolutely condemn that.
Firing missiles and things at ships.
I've been campaigning against the Houthis since they were established. They're an extremist, terrorist organisation. There's a threat, above all, to the people of Yemen. We must oppose the Houthis. But most people on that march had nothing to do with those kind of slogans and did not support them.
Why are you taking part in those marches, Peter? Why on earth are you out there with them? These are supporters of terrorism who are supporting the enemies of the United Kingdom, frankly. Why are you out there marching alongside them?
Because the march theme, which everybody signed up to, apart from a tiny minority, was a ceasefire to end the civilian deaths, to protect both Jewish and Arab people.
When you see it week after week, Peter, the theme's gone, hasn't it? The theme is, whatever the theme was when you got there, the theme has now vacated the building. And
No. If you look at 99% of the placards and slogans, it was ceasefire now.
All right.
In order to protect civilian Jewish and Arab lives.
All right.
Both
Peter,
are
you're completely
important.
in denial.
We cannot condemn a protest on the basis of the bad behaviour of a minority. They are not representative.
Go on now, final word.
Yeah, I think that Peter's views here have no relation whatsoever to reality. We should all be condemning these hate marches on the streets of London. They're unacceptable. They are fundamentally anti-British as well. They're hate marches filled with fear and intimidation. There should be no place for this on the streets of London or any British city.
All right, both of you, spirited discussion. Look, who do you agree with? Is it ever justifiable to ban a protest? Kareen on X says the right to protest is the cornerstone of our democracy. Take that away, and what do we have? Kareen, what I will agree with you there, which is what I put to Niall, is that there is a slippery slope potentially at play here. You ban something you disagree with and you find vehemently disgusting, but then all of a sudden, what happens when you want to go out and protest about something you care about? Chris on X says, yes, if they are a threat to our national security and our way of life. Andy says, unless the protesters are being violent or calling for violence, then no. So, 75% of you think that it is justifiable to ban a protest. 25% of you say it is not. Coming up, in a GB News exclusive, we expose Britain's benefits cheats. But next, is Keir Starmer finally about to ditch his £28 billion green pledge? And which international celeb has slammed the woke ideology of the left? Find out as the one and only Lee Anderson joins me live in this studio. That's next on Patrick Christys Tonight, and we are only on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
You have a president in President Biden who's not enforcing the law that was passed by Congress. President Obama, criticize him or not, actually enforced the law and was deporting people that had crossed illegally. Of course, President Trump enforced the law and improved the law to make sure that, and worked with Mexico to have the Remain in Mexico policy. Biden has abandoned federal policy. In fact, he's deliberately trying to let in as many immigrants as possible. More for the Democrats, more is better and less is racist.
Just astonishing. And the statement that Greg Abbott put out is really feisty stuff. He said the federal government has broken the contract between the United States and the state of Texas. And the eye numbers, Greg, are simply eye-watering. 6 million illegal immigrants have crossed our southern border in just 3 years, Governor Abbott says. That's more than the population of 33 states in the United States. Astonishing numbers.
And Martin, that's just Texas. If you add Arizona and other border states, you know, it's pushing 10 million. By the end of Biden's term, it'll be 11 million. A study by Yale University a few weeks ago, 3 very liberal professors that did the study estimate there's 22 million illegal aliens. So this is a crisis that was created by Biden. It's what he wants. They want unfettered access to the border. They're letting them in. It's a real hardship on the working people of Texas and other border states. And now it's a real hardship on cities that the federal government, as well as the governors of Texas and other states, are sending some of the migrants to those so-called sanctuary cities.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
It's Patrick Christys Tonight. We're on GB News and I will bring you an exclusive expose on disability fraud from the DWP very soon, Department for Work and Pensions. But first, it's time for former Tory Deputy Chair Lee Anderson, and Keir Starmer continues to flounder over his landmark net zero plan. So Labour are now reportedly scaling back rather than scrapping entirely their muddled manifesto pledge to borrow 28 billion quid to boost green investment.
And we're going to need investment. That's where the 28 billion comes in, that investment that's desperately needed. That mission of clean power by 2030, haven't moved that date back at all. And I'm very clear we need investment to do that. We need to borrow to invest to do that. That's a principle I believe in and I'm absolutely happy to go out and defend.
What's that? Hang on. I think the U-turn's in. Because supposedly breaking tonight, he's now scrapping it, is he? I think he's scrapping it, scaling it back, goodness knows what. That's going to be announced tomorrow. Senior Labour sources are saying that Starmer will pin the decision on economic uncertainty caused by the Tories. Yeah, look, this changes literally every day. What are they going to do with this 28 billion quid and where are they going to get that money from? Meanwhile, at PopCon yesterday, our very own Lee Anderson offered a different vision for Britain.
The big problems is this net zero. Now, I've been knocking on doors, like many colleagues in here for donkey's years, talking to people on the doorstep, and it never comes up once on the doorstep. You might get the odd weirdo in the corner with the Green candidate who's got about 20 votes. He might just start banging on about it. We should have an opt-in, opt-out on our fuel bills. If you want to pay the levy, you tick that box. If you don't want to pay it... Now, I'm pretty sure that coal 100 million years ago was trees and plants. Is that right, Jacob? It was. So I would argue that that's sustainable.
There we go. Right, Lee, first things first. It's hard to keep up, but we think that Labour are now going to scale back or scrap this £28 billion green investment pledge that they were definitely in favour of just a couple of days ago, but weren't a couple of days before that, but I think were again a couple of days... Well, what's going on?
Well, what a slippery, snivelling snake he is, Patrick. Sir Keir, he's backtracking again. He's looking for another bandwagon to jump on. They've not got one clear policy on net zero. There is a populist leader, is Sir Keir. You know, I spoke yesterday at the PopCon conference on net zero. I've got my doubts about this journey we're going on. Like anybody else, I think we need to leave this planet in a better condition than when we arrived. We are guardians of this planet. But the net zero journey, I think, you know, it's costing far too much. We don't know the total cost. And the constituents that I deal with in Ashfield, they're very upset about the amount of money it's costing them in their bills. 500 or 600 quid a year it's costing them. And like I said on that clip, when I knock on doors in Ashfield, they never bring this up. They never mention it at all. What they're interested in, Patrick, is the cost of their fuel bills, not this race to net zero.
Look, I do want to, at some point, try and offer some balance when it comes to... Keir Starmer, no doubt, will say he's been very clear about his £28 billion pledge, but...
No, he's not.
But it's difficult for me to say that because... He hasn't. He really hasn't. Every single day in this office when we talk about what we're going to do on this show, we're looking at what he's saying about the £28 billion, and it does seem to change. So, look, Keir Starmer would possibly refute what Lee Anderson has had to say there, but there we go. Can I just ask you, you got a lot of stick for this coal used to be, what was it, wood and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
Now, I was at that PopCon thing. No, that was a joke, wasn't it?
I made a joke because I was talking about Drax Power Station in Yorkshire, which burns... it was a coal-fired power station back in the day, Patrick. It actually now burns wooden pellets. This is wood that is... it's chopped down trees, basically, from North America. It's shipped over the Atlantic in diesel guzzling tankers, then crushed into powder, set fire to, and burned, burned the power station to produce electricity. And the experts, the so-called experts, say this is sustainable energy because it's trees being chopped down that can grow again. Well, I say, well, Drax Power Station used to be powered by a coal mine just a few miles away. And you know what? Coal, 100 million years ago, was trees and plants. And I was making a little bit of a joke, but the imbeciles at papers like The Independent and whatever were saying that I was a bit thick, I was retarded, and didn't know what I was talking about. I was just making a joke.
Do you think they did that because you're northern?
Yeah, it's northern racism, this is. What it is, they're attacking northern humour, and they, quite frankly, Patrick, they should be ashamed of themselves.
OK, all right. Now, we also had another a special guest yesterday, because there was the glamorous Australian Holly Valance. Now, she well and truly nailed her political colours firmly to the right-wing mast. Here we go.
Everyone starts off as a lefty and then wakes up at some point after you start either making money, working, trying to run a business, trying to buy a home, and then realise what crap ideas they all are, and then you go to the right.
I'd just like to say something very quickly as well. Apologies if anybody was offended by a particular word that was said just a few moments ago. We move on. Lee, Holly Valance saying that the left is full of crap ideas.
Well, I mean, Holly's quite clearly, she's an astute actress. I mean, I'm a big fan of Holly's, and it's quite clear, looking at that clip, and I spoke to her yesterday at a party after the event, and it is quite clear to me that she knows her politics, she's quite switched on, and she had plenty to say to me after the event, and... You know what? She's a big supporter of the Conservative Party, conservative values. Conservative values. And, yeah, I mean, she's just a great woman.
Yeah, I mean, well, she was making the point there that when people she was putting kind of get into the real world and start wanting to pay for things or run a business, etc. I know that she got quite a lot of stick. People said, well, you know, you've married a very wealthy man. What do you know? Again, I just wonder if that's quite offensive, really, to Holly.
Well, it is offensive. I mean, I don't think you marry somebody because of their wealth, do you, Patrick? I don't know. If you meet somebody, you fall in love, you marry that person because you've got a lot in common with them, you want to have a family with them and have a future with them. The people who say this are just jealous. It's normally the people on the left. They're quite spiteful.
OK, all right, Lee, thank you very much for your time this evening. That is, of course, Lee Anderson. Heck of a lot more to get through because next Monday, the Prime Minister will take part in a special People's Forum live here from the North East, and it's only on GB News. It's going to be box office this. Over the course of the hour, he will take questions directly from you, the great British public. We are the People's Channel. We're putting on this event for you. So, look, come on, get yourselves involved, all right? If you want to be there, head to gbnews.com/PM. That's gbnews.com/PM to register your interest today, or you can scan that QR code. It's on your screen right now if you're watching us on the telly. If you're listening to us on the radio, turn your telly on, get the QR code, use it, get that. Now, coming up at 10, with triple killer Valdo Calacan entitled to claim thousands of pounds in state benefits whilst he is in a secure hospital, I speak to the mother of one of the Nottingham victims, Barnaby Webber.
I want Valdo Calacan to be done for murder because that's what he is.
Don't miss that TV exclusive. She really does not hold back, and who could blame her? But next, it's another GB News exclusive on a £40,000 disability benefits cheat, and you will not believe how they were caught. This is Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christys tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
So the highway code was amended recently. Passed me by, but anyway, a new poll suggests this has made no difference to the safety of road users, and I could believe that.
Yeah, there was an awful crash in London, wasn't there? A bus and a pedestrian yesterday.
Fatality.
So we're asking, is the highway code fit for purpose, or should we just scrap it altogether? That's our debate this morning, and we're joined by Danny Kelly. She argues highways are not fit for purpose, and cycling instructor Anna Hughes thinks they are. Good morning to you both.
You see, Anna, I think it's a good thing. I think the highway code is a good thing. I just don't think that any of us pay any attention to it, or we should all be tested on it quite regularly, I would have thought. We should have revision courses in it.
Yeah, I think you just summed it up, Eamon, by saying the changes passed you by. I actually asked a few of my fellow cyclists and pedestrians, what is classified as vulnerable road users, about this very thing. I said, has the new highway code made things safer for you? And most people said, not at all. Drivers don't know what it is. They don't know what the changes are. They probably don't know what the rules are to start with. And as you've just said, doing refreshers is a really good idea. It's a bit bizarre that we're given a license to operate this quite dangerous machinery, and then we're never tested again, and especially not on the highway code, which is, especially when it changes, why wouldn't we be retested on that or have to do refresher courses on it. You know, there are conflicts on the road, there are fatalities. It makes sense to be aware of what the highway code says, because it is there to keep us safe.
Yeah, Danny Kelly, when I think back, I think it was 1999 I passed my driving test. Hardly any bikes on the road then, to be honest, probably virtually none.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Well, it's time now for another exclusive, and I'm about to lay bare the brazen corruption of Britain's benefits cheat, including the latest case of a fraudster who stole £44,000 worth of taxpayers' money in disability payments whilst taking part in gruelling Christmas walks dressed as an elf. Kelly Simpson said that she suffered from severe mobility issues due to a degenerative disc disease in her back. She claimed tasks such as using the bath independently, climbing stairs and putting on socks and shoes were impossible. But the Department for Work and Pensions investigators saw on social media that Simpson took part in 2 festive walks, each more than 7 miles long, dressed as a Christmas pudding and Santa's little helper. Simpson was sentenced to 18 weeks in prison, suspended for 18 months last month. The DWP is working on recovering the money that's been stolen, but the scam bust comes as the department is spending £900 million on counter-fraud operations, with spending across 3 years. More trained specialists will be recruited to review millions of universal credit claims. The DWP said that its enhanced counter-fraud programme and wider benefits checks helped to prevent losses of at least £18 billion last year. But Christmas Pudding Kelly wasn't the first, nor will she be the last of Britain's benefits swindlers. In 2014, Janet Curtis, then 64, pocketed 144 grand in disability benefits after saying she could barely walk, yet was caught out when fraud investigators found proof that she'd been water skiing. In 2019, Nasreen Akhtar, aged 50, was filmed dancing at a wedding despite claiming benefits worth 260 grand by saying she was too ill to work and had poor mobility. In 2017, Maribel Milligan from County Durham was jailed for 3 years for swindling £540,000 in disability payments by saying she couldn't move. A judge ordered her to repay 190 grand or face extra jail time, and she was rumbled because she was caught on film dancing to Michael Jackson. And Cumbrian man Neil Flyer claimed almost 30 grand in benefits for life-limiting medical conditions before secretly splashing out on drugs and a lavish lifestyle that included an action-packed holiday in Florida. Pictures on Facebook showed him on a 90-foot drop slide at an Orlando water park, water skiing and swimming with dolphins. I'm joined now by author and broadcaster Jenny Barnett. Jenny, thank you very, very much. We have just got so many people on the take in Britain, haven't we? Benefits Britain, Jenny.
No, you're totally wrong. And I watched your debate with Peter Tatchell. I thought it was very interesting because he was saying you do not ban a protest because of a handful of idiots. We have a population of 67.5 million. Half of that, 54.2%, I'm reading this, are on benefits. So we're already living in a country where the government has presided over for 14 years and many millions of people, 36 millions of people...
are on benefits, Jenny?
No, yeah, because jobs, the whole thing has gone to pieces, as you know, but the latest national statistics confirm that in the last year, fraud and error rates in 2023 fell to 3.6%. And with universal credit, that went down.
Right, look, honestly, are you telling me, Jenny, seriously, that you think 54% of this country really need to be on benefits?
I think if they... It's hard to imagine when you are a young affluent man working, or you're like me with a history behind me. But when we went through a difficult patch of trying to get our council tax reduced, we had a 48-page document that came in, and in the end, we threw it up in the air and said we can't do it.
Because ironically, you didn't want to do a bit of work.
That's not, no, the answer is that people don't go on benefits. Most people, 54% of people, don't go on benefits if they don't have to. The handful of people, like the ones you've just cited, they make it rubbish for absolutely everybody, but not everybody is a criminal, and not everybody is taking benefits because they're swindling the country.
Jenny, come on now. It is clearly far too easy to sign on in this country and to get the old gyro or whatever it is these days, get your benefits and all of that. You know, and it is removed. If 54% of people in this country are on benefits, right, what's the point? Why do we bother to get up and go to work? What are we paying our taxes for now? Highest tax versus World War II. You can walk into a Tesco's and steal whatever food you want. I don't know why any of us bother, Jenny.
Right. Your version of our country comes through musty eyeballs. You know, I was thinking when you phoned me up to do this, it used to be all for one and one for all. Now it's all for one and one for one because of your heroine, Margaret Thatcher, who described there is no such thing as society. But the Trussell Trust and the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, this is important for you as a young, decent human being. A single person needs £120 a week to afford the essentials. A couple needs £200 a week. Universal credit claimants will be at least £140 short. And you heard the news today about pensioners. You've got to have £59,000.
Jenny, we've got to go. I'm sorry, we're bang out of time, but thank you. Good points made at the end. All right, Jenny Barnett there. Look, coming up, I have got an interview, a TV exclusive with the mother of one of the victims of that Nottingham killer. She does not hold back. Find out how much you could be paying him whilst he's in hospital.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office. I'm Aidan McGiven. Cold in the north for the next 24 hours, mild and wet in the south, in between the risk of disruptive snow in places. Here's the setup as we end the day. We've got clear spells across northern parts of the UK, further snow showers into the north of Scotland, a widespread frost across many parts of northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. But further south, rain, wind and milder air arrives into parts of South Wales, southern England, some heavy and persistent rain first thing. Mild air in the south clashes with cold air further north. The band of rain in between turns increasingly wintry as we go through Thursday morning. So across mid and North Wales, parts of North Midlands into Northern England and then Northern Ireland, we're going to see rain at lower levels, perhaps some sleet in some parts at lower levels, but certainly some disruptive snow over any hills above 100, 200 metres. And for parts of North Wales, the Peak District into the South Pennines, the risk of very disruptive snow, 25 centimetres, and some freezing rain in places as well. All of this pushes north. We've got much milder but wetter weather into the south for Friday. And the rain and hill snow moves through northern England and into southern and central Scotland by this stage. Further wintry showers for the far north of Scotland, but bright weather in between. Milder air for most of us this weekend, but with further rain and showers at times.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Francis, Just Stop Oil have in the past broken the law. I remember distinctly the Dartford crossing. That ended up with 2 jailed, I believe, if I remember correctly. Is it ever justified in your view?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I mean, I would have to say yes. I mean, we're trying to preserve my life, your lives, the lives of your family, and it's not just the planet that we're trying to protect, it's the lives of millions of people. And, you know, we know from history that we have to break the law in order to put pressure on the government and to be listened to.
No one would doubt your sincerity in your views. You genuinely believe in what you fight for. But there are others who think differently. For example, there are Islamist extremists who believe that people will go to hell unless they convert to Islam. They will sincerely, perhaps, break the law in order to force people to convert. In their view, they might be saving people's lives for eternity. There might be abortion activists who say that babies are being murdered and to save their lives we need to break the law to stop people having abortions. Why do you get to say that your moral conviction is the one that's right and other people's individual moral conviction are those that are wrong?
So what's really integral to the Just Stop Oil campaign is the fact that it is a non-violent campaign. That's what separates us from the examples that you've just given. We're absolutely dedicated non-violence, both as a tactic and as a principle. So though we might be breaking the law...
If individuals take it upon themselves to break the law for whatever their course is, surely the way that we decide what society wants in general is democratic and within the law.
Well, of course, we know also that protest is absolutely integral to maintaining and upholding a democracy, and in particular, non-violent protest. I mean, I really can't express to you how severe this situation is, and I'm sure you know this.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
I want Valdo Callicane to be done for murder, because that's what he is.
a TV exclusive with the mother of one of the Nottingham psycho killer's victims. What she says will make your blood boil. Also,
all the weeks to say that when Brianna's mother is in this chamber. Shame.
Shameful Sunak, or was that shameless virtue signalling from Sir Keir Starmer? Plus,
we really appreciate everyone's kind messages. Thank you.
Did Prince William and the King actually snub Prince Harry? And nurse,
There is some movement, and I don't want to, well, maybe choose my words.
There is more of that astonishing clip, and I've got all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages for you tonight with Express political scoop machine Christian Cowgie, man of the people Adam Brooks, and author Rebecca Reed. Oh, and what is wrong with this work of art? Any guesses? OK, get ready, Britain. Here we go. The mother of one of the victims of Nottingham killer Valdo Callicane speaks in a TV exclusive, and that's next.
And the top story from the GB newsroom tonight. Police hunting a suspected chemical attacker say he was in a relationship with his victim. New video has been released of Afghan asylum seeker Abdullah Zaidi, nearly a week after a corrosive liquid was thrown at the woman in South London. Police say she'd agreed to meet him on the day of the attack, and they believe a breakdown in their relationship may have been a motive. The 31-year-old mother, who may lose the sight of one eye, remains under sedation in hospital. Darius Nassimi of the Afghan and Central Asian Association says fellow Afghans should not be helping Azidi.
Someone like him should not be harboured. He himself needs help as well. I don't know if he has any mental health problems or issues. For the Afghan community, the message is please stop harbouring him if anyone is, and please stop helping him if they are.
Tonight in the United States, the Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that Hamas's proposal for a ceasefire in Gaza has clear non-starters, but he said there is space for an agreement. Antony Blinken earlier said that more aid was also needed in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority needed renewal. He said the focus remains on bringing the Israeli hostages back. Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has rejected Hamas's proposed ceasefire, saying total victory in Gaza is possible within months. Here, the Prime Minister's been accused of letting parts of the country go without basic dental care. Sir Keir Starmer claims the NHS has been neglected by the Conservatives while they've been in power. That's after the government announced new plans to boost the number of appointments across England by offering to pay dentists for every new NHS patient. The former pop star and paedophile Gary Glitter has been denied parole, with his victim's lawyer saying they're glad the parole board has done the right thing. Glitter, whose real name is Paul Gadd, was jailed for 16 years in 2015 for sexually abusing 3 girls between 1975 and 1980. He was automatically released last year after serving half of his sentence, but put back behind bars less than 6 weeks later after he breached his licence. One victim's lawyer said they hoped Glitter would now serve his full sentence, adding it was completely unfair that our client had to endure this glitter parole circus over and over again. Now, snow is on its way, and heavier snowfall could cause disruption later this week, with as much as 20 centimetres possibly moving in to more elevated areas of Britain. The Met Office has now expanded its yellow weather warning, with temperatures set to drop across Northern Ireland, Northern Wales and Northern England later on this week. The Met Office saying motorists should check air pressure in tyres, oil and screen wash levels and allow longer for journey times. Meteorologists are saying the cold spell could linger into late February as well. And tonight, the Prince of Wales has spoken about his father's cancer diagnosis for the first time and thanked the public for their kind messages of support. Prince William was at an event raising funds for London's air ambulance charity. Hollywood star Tom Cruise was there, as well as Arsenal manager Mikel Arteta. The Prince also thanked those wishing his wife a speedy recovery after her abdominal surgery. Meanwhile, King Charles has postponed all his public-facing duties on the advice of his doctors, and it's understood weekly audiences with the Prime Minister will resume in 2 weeks. For the very latest stories, do sign up for GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Prepare yourselves for a case that shames the British justice system and all common decency. It brings me no joy to present to you the most egregious example of soft-touch justice and how victims are treated worse than deranged criminals. A dangerous, paranoid schizophrenic with a history of violence, free to prowl the streets despite a warrant for his arrest, who slaughtered 3 innocent people and tried to kill 3 more. Valdo Calacane was allowed to plead manslaughter. He is allowed to serve his time, possibly just a few years, in a secure hospital, and now it has emerged that you could still be paying his benefits. In fact, he could come out of that secure hospital clutching a note from a doctor who says that he's fine now, with up to £150,000 worth of benefits in his bank account. Calacane went on the rampage in Nottingham, and among his victims was student Barnaby Webber. I have a television exclusive now with Emma Webber, Barnaby's mother. The details that she reveals right now are absolutely shocking.
The news today is that Valdo Calacane could be claiming hundreds of pounds of benefits for him to spend on nice clothes, electronics, anything he likes, really, whilst he's in a secure mental hospital. How has that made you feel?
It's just added insult to injury on top of everything else. To, you know, with the best will in the world, if this monster, as we refer to him, stays in for as long as we hope. I mean, we'd like it for the rest of his life, but I'm very fearful about hospital orders, having read everything in the past couple of weeks. But if he's in there for 30 years, say, he'll only be in his early 50s. No, yeah. He'll only be in his early 60s when he comes out, and he would have amassed, you know, because benefits will rise, but I worked out earlier, it could be anything up to £150,000. And on top of his you know, his all-inclusive package that he's on, which also includes, you know, lots of activities, lots of treatment, lots of therapy, and it's very, very patient. But where's the penal element of this? We don't agree it's manslaughter. So, like I say, it just adds insult to everything else that we've been saying, really.
Is there a sense that this monster's been sent to some kind of glorified holiday camp in a way?
Yeah, I don't want to be like an armchair expert on psychiatric hospitals or the law, but our families, and I say that on behalf of the 3 families of deceased people in Nottingham, we feel like we've had to come in and we've had to look into things because we just don't trust in the system. And I have seen the things in the newspaper and the links online of the facilities there, and it's a well-supported facility, isn't it, with everything that's on offer?
Yeah, and you mentioned there about being quite sceptical about these hospital orders, and you said that you've looked into them quite a bit.
Yeah.
What are you fearful of then? What do you think could happen? I mean, we did have a case a couple of weeks ago of some bloke who was also a killer who was out after just a couple of years. Is that the fear, really?
Yeah, spot on. That's exactly what it is, and that's exactly what we're terrified of, that this monster, this individual, could be out in society. And I think fearful for the public, but also that where's the sense of justice? He's a malicious, predetermined murderer, and he could be out in a number of years. I think we're being supported by a great organisation called 100 Families, and the chap that runs that's called Julian Hendy, whose dad was also murdered by knife crime from a paranoid schizophrenic, but this person got murder and got a murder charge. But Julian and I have been talking and looking at figures over the past couple of weeks, and he's more informed than me, but I believe the average term that's served for these indefinite orders is between 5 and 10 years, and that's terrifying, right, when you consider the brutality and the impact of what happened in Nottingham, not just on the 3 families who lost members, but also on those 3 other victims who've got life-changing injuries and long-term trauma. It's just not fair, quite frankly.
It's absolutely not fair. It's absolutely not justice at all. But it doesn't really appear to me that there's been much justice from start to finish on this. I mean, there's question marks as to whether or not this guy should have even been walking the streets. I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying he was wanted anyway. And then he's been able to take the manslaughter charge and then into a hospital order. Look, obviously, incredibly difficult time for you, but how does it feel for you with that burning sense of injustice there as well?
Yeah, it's devastating. On top of tragedy, there's layers and layers and layers of trauma, and this final bit. And as odd as this sounds, but when we were sat in Downing Street last Monday in front of the Prime Minister and the sort of top end of government ministers, and the first thing that we said was, we don't want to be here. We're actually really angry that we're here. I would like to have been invited to Downing Street maybe sometime in the future for a positive thing, not to talk about how devastated we are about how badly we've been treated. I also think the fact that we had an audience with Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition, followed very shortly by Downing Street, that was turned around very, very quickly, does give us resolve that, there is something really wrong here, and it's been wrong for a very, very long time with this individual. It's multi-agency failings, but we are not going to become experts. We have to now work with people that we do trust, and thankfully we trust the O'Malley Kumars and the Coates family, and we can work together, and I think we're strong because of that. But it does break my heart that we even have to do this, because we can't begin to grieve the loss of our precious son, because we're having to fight and garner what strength we've got left to make sure that we get listened to.
So what changes do you want to happen so that you feel as though you then can start to grieve?
Well, so we feel like vindicated. Oh, gosh, where to start? Because I think if you look at it from a wider perspective, just looking at the failings in the health system, in mental health particularly, leading up to this event, the lack of communication between hospital trusts and police forces, the myth that Leicestershire had the month before he committed these murders. They didn't bother checking him on the computer properly. If they had, they would have seen the outstanding warrant and to see how serious it was. And I just think that all of it, it's difficult with this country because we're calling it for it in so many different ways, aren't we? But it has to, for the sake of the nation and the safety of the public, everything has to properly be looked at. From a personal family perspective, I can't have a time machine, so I want Valdo Callaghan to be done for murder, because that's what he is. And if our legal system and clever barristers and defence teams and ineffective psychiatrists can make it work and make the legal system work as it has for us, then I would suggest the law's wrong and the law needs changing. And somebody very high up in the government said to us, just because it's a law, Emma, it doesn't mean it's right. And just because it's a law, it doesn't mean that they always get it right. And I stand by that, and it gives me heart that we have so much momentum and so much movement, and that all three families are dedicated towards, what we're asking for. But, never fear that it's exhausting and it's taking its toll, but fight we will.
Fight you will, and so much support. Just one last one with you, Emma, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because as it currently stands then, the system, it would seem to me, is geared more towards maybe protecting the criminal than helping the families. Yeah. And also, until you get the kind of changes that you want, this could happen again, right?
I think this will happen again. And I would say from that perspective, it's a really valid point, Patrick. I'm glad you asked me, because victim support in this country, whilst there is some, it's wholly inadequate, and it's very, very much geared towards the defendant or perpetrator. As an example, in our family, there's Barney's younger brother, Charlie, there's David, my husband, and myself. We've been given a victim support caseworker, a wonderful woman who's been with us since about a week after. It's a bit late in coming. She's got 55 other families she has to look after. So we don't have non-stop contact. It's only Monday to Friday, 9 till 5. On top of that, the therapy that we are offered, we're allowed to have 12 paid for sessions each. And then after that, you're on your own. So Callaghan can sit and be rewarded potentially with £300-400 a month, on top of everything else that it's cost to keep him alive after his murder of my son. But we could be faced with, if we want to try and survive this through no fault of our own, putting ourselves through therapy, I don't know, £50-80 a session, whatever it is, times that by 3, times that by however long it's going to take. You can do the maths. I can see why victims and victims' families lose. As I said in a quote this week, I think I can see why relationships fail, why businesses fail, and why sometimes people themselves lose themselves or even their lives, because it's that bad. And really, we need to be fully supported. So I do call for a complete overhaul of that too. But it just feels like we've got so much to say. We've got to deal with it bit by bit at the moment.
Mm. Well, Emma, can I just say thank you very, very much for coming on the show and for articulating that so well, and for being, so strong and brave about it all. I really hope that we can talk again, and I really hope that you can get the change that you want, and if there's any way whatsoever that we can help with anything in that regard, then really we would love to be a part of that with you. So thank you very, very much, Emma, and love to you and all the family as well. So take care.
Thank you. And to you. Thanks, Patrick.
What an incredible lady, eh? What an absolutely remarkable lady. But a huge amount of that made me incredibly angry, and I dare say it did to you as well. I'm joined again by my panel now. We've got Christine Calgie, Adam Brooks and Rebecca Ree. Adam, I'll start with you on this. This guy should never have been allowed out on the street, essentially. No. He was wanted. He's then been able to plead manslaughter. He's then gone to quite a cushy mental facility. He could end up with 150 grand of taxpayers' cash in his back pocket and maybe even be out in a few years.
Look, I'm not sure if the viewers know, but he was detained 4 times previously in mental hospitals, and it was concluded that he was a low risk to people. Now, how wrong can the authorities be with that? This has cost lives. You know, this man is evil personified. Now, the fact that he's getting benefits because he's in a hospital and not a prison, you know, it's terrible what's happening to these victims' families. Essentially, indirectly, they are contributing money to this man via their tax.
Well, they could be. We should just be clear here. We don't know whether or not he is claiming benefits, and we don't know how much.
But they make the point. They make the point, Rebecca, that they get something like 12 hours worth of therapy sessions. This guy gets medication. 3 therapy sessions a day or whatever she said it was that she'd looked into. You know, it's just they are treating the criminal better than the victims.
Nobody is arguing that the victim support in this country is robust or appropriate. I wouldn't for a second. My issue here is that if you are detained under a Mental Health Act and therefore you are sectioned, you cannot have a process where you immediately stop people's benefits when they're sectioned, because that will result in people who are mentally ill who are sectioned coming out and being impoverished immediately, which creates a worse cycle. He should be sectioned under a different Mental Health Act, which means he cannot claim benefits. That is a very easy thing to change that could be changed like that.
All right. I find it remarkable that he wasn't done for murder.
I find this discussion remarkably similar to the one we had in the previous hour about the Russian spy. As the mother of Barnaby said, her words, multi-institutional failure, which is exactly what's happened. A failure with the police, a failure with the justice system, failure with the health service. And, it's similar to that spy story earlier. And really, the thing that is the most frustrating is that it's the worst of all worlds, right? It was both incompetence and it was a malign sort of values and morals that these institutions have, which, as you say, places the rights and freedoms of the perpetrators of crime above those of the victims. And I think it makes people incredibly angry. And, once again, it's a damning reflection on where the country is, I think.
All right. Sorry, look, we are out of time, and I've just got to read this, but look, we will have time to come back to it a little bit later on in the show. But Janine McKinney from the Crown Prosecution Service said Valdo Calacaine's pleas to manslaughter were only accepted after very careful analysis of the evidence. We reached this conclusion because the expert medical evidence was overwhelming, they said, namely that Calacaine was acting under the influence of a serious mental health condition. And responding to criticisms that his police force should have done more to arrest Calacaine on an outstanding warrant, Assistant Chief Constable Rob Griffin said, I've personally reviewed, I should say, this matter, and we should have done more to arrest him. In my opinion, it is highly unlikely that he would have received a custodial sentence for the alleged initial assault. Of course, an arrest may have triggered a route back into mental health services, but as we have seen from his previous encounters with those services, it seems unlikely that he would have engaged with this process. Well, so you just watch it? Wouldn't have had a custodial sentence, wouldn't have engaged, we'll just wash our hands with it then, and, we are where we are now, and 3 people are dead. So coming up, shifting tone, but Joe Biden's at it again.
There is some movement, and I don't want to maybe choose my words.
OK. All that and more in the very first half of my press pack shortly. But first, should Prince William put the past behind him now and finally make up with Harry? Because the Prince of Wales has actually spoken out tonight. And you can hear what he had to say in the Royal Dispatch with Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. Yes, we will be hearing from Prince William in just a sec. It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney. Weekdays from 3 p.m.
Or they're trying to make it better, or they're trying to make it slower, a lot slower. Slower enough, in fact, for it to sufficiently allow the boats to start coming in to cause further political damage to Rishi Sunak.
Which it will do if it carries on.
Of course it will. And this is the Labour peers, the Lib Dem peers, and no doubt some of the Conservative wets, banding together, causing political damage to Rishi Sunak. And the longer it goes on, the worse it will be for the Conservative Party.
There's now a deadline on the Rwanda plan. It's got to start working this summer to have any electoral benefit for Rishi Sunak, because of course the election is in November. By then the crossings will slow down. It's got to be up and running by about May or June, and then they'll take it from there.
Cool. And you have a crumb of comfort for us. Rishi Sunak met a Prime Minister.
Well, a crumb of comfort for those who want to stop the boat, certainly, or we'll get towards it. The PM today met Alexander De Croo, who's a Belgian Prime Minister. They've agreed a UK-Belgium law enforcement cooperation agreement. In short, that is a focus on surveillance and information, ultimately, which should help stop the boats. Not many boats make crossings from Belgium, but it's a kind of, they can hopefully use law enforcement. These are the kind of deals which Sir Keir Starmer's talking about. If he becomes Prime Minister, he'll do more of these deals with countries on the continent, and this shows that the PM, the Tory PM, can do them too.
And there may be intelligence sharing of crime gangs that operate within Belgium. As you say, it's a much, much further distance, much more perilous across the North Sea. Very unlikely that people will be leaving in any great numbers from Belgium. But nevertheless, is this of note, or is it a token victory against the backdrop of domestic loss?
They could do it with Belgium and not do it with the European Union, because so far we've been told the returns agreements can't be agreed with individual countries because they've got the European Union to talk to. Maybe this deal can be mirrored with France, and that might help with better cooperation, because basically after Brexit we're a sovereign country. We have to work on some areas more closely with our European neighbours.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and it's time for the Royal Dispatch. Prince William has spoken publicly for the first time since his father, King Charles's shock cancer diagnosis and his wife's abdominal surgery, as he resumed work this evening, attending a gala dinner. Watch.
We really appreciate everyone's kind messages. Thank you.
Well, while it was back to work for Wills, it was back to the US for his brother Prince Harry, who travelled to California this morning after a mere 24 hours in the UK. It emerged that Harry's meeting with his father, the King, reportedly lasted just 30 minutes, and that he would gladly have accepted a reunion with his brother, but instead spent last night in a London hotel. I'm joined now by my royal masterminds. It's Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. Lady C, thank you very much. Do you think Wills and Charles actually snubbed Harry a bit here? Or I'll fit you in for 30 minutes and then William saying, nah, I'm not seeing you at all?
Well, my understanding is that actually the meeting lasted for exactly 12 minutes, not 30 minutes or 45 minutes. And also that Harry took it upon himself without an invitation to get on a plane, fly over, and inform the King's office that he was arriving. So one could actually almost wonder, who was the visit for? Was it for Harry? Was it for the King? Or was it for Netflix? Or was it a combination of all three? I don't think anybody is particularly convinced that Harry has done this for any other reason but to work himself into the narrative and keep himself at the forefront of the public's attention.
Look, just before I go to Phil, I've got to ask Lady C, because you seem to know, in your views, that this meeting lasted for 12 minutes. Do you have any idea what was discussed?
No.
Okay,
sorry, that I don't.
Worth an ask, eh? Phil, look, I'll go to you on that one. So 12 minutes, apparently, this meeting. I mean, goodness me. Is it time for them to make up a bit, or should they have spent longer with Harry, do you think, or do you agree with Lady C there?
Yeah, good evening, Patrick. Well, as if he hasn't got enough problems, Prince William's team, Aston Villa, have crashed out of the FA Cup tonight to Chelsea. So I'm happy, but he won't be happy with that. But he's been hobnobbing with Tom Cruise tonight. But as for meeting up with Harry, I think that was going to be mission impossible, wasn't it? I mean, his priority at the moment is to look after Kate, look after the children. He's not in the mood. He's not in a forgiving mood for Harry at the moment. And I don't think anyone blames him, to be honest. And yes, the King saw him. Gone down from 45 to 30 to 12 minutes, hasn't it? I mean, we'll probably hear it was 5 minutes soon, I don't know. But I do find that extraordinary that it was such a short meeting. I mean, coming 5,000 miles and then only having that short meeting, I mean, to most of us, it just seems incredible. But obviously, it's a first step. The King has left the door open, so we can't really complain if Harry tries to step through it, I suppose. So it's a first tiny step. But as for William, I can't see it.
And he spent the night, Lady C, supposedly in a London hotel. Could they not have found him a room somewhere?
Of course they could have found him a room somewhere. So could his friends have put him up. But the fact is, nobody wants to put him up. I mean, the message is loud and clear. He is a pariah. He's a pariah because of his conduct and because of his wife's conduct. You know, the press can go on and on all they want about reconciliation and all of that rubbish. The fact of the matter is that as far as most people are concerned, Harry's a treacherous little sod and he's getting his just desserts. And anything else is nonsense.
OK, and Phil, do you think that when it comes to Harry trying to nudge his way back in, Lady C made the point there that she wonders whether or not this is actually more for Harry than it was really for the King. Do you agree with that?
Lady C's not holding back tonight, is she? I think the proof of the pudding is going to be in the next few weeks, actually. If he goes back and he starts leaking some of the details, he's absolutely finished. If he's genuinely trying to make it up with the King, then I think a period of silence will suffice. And maybe later in the year, because I'm sure Charles would, despite all the problems, he would like to see his grandchildren. He would like to see Archie and Lilibet, and they're only going to come over if they come over with Meghan as well. So let's hope that just for once, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Hope he's genuine. But if he starts leaking stuff, that's the end of it. I'm afraid it's never going to recover.
Yeah. OK. Yeah. Go on, Lady C. Go on.
The proof of the pudding is in the eating. I love Phil, but I'm not going to agree with him. The fact of the matter is, Harry is the one who took it upon himself to come uninvited. He leaked the fact that he was coming, therefore presenting the palace with no option but to receive him. And I agree, if the King, as all parents, will want to have a rapprochement eventually with their children if there's a problem. And I think good luck to the King in that regard. But the fact of the matter is that Harry is playing the system. He and Meghan are operators and they are playing the system. And I'm afraid, having had a mother like Meghan, I know the games. And I have to tell you, Harry and Meghan's behaviour is so transparent. It's clearer than freshly cleaned glass.
OK, well, look, both of you, thank you very much. I mean, Phil, do you want to refute any of that, or are you on board with Lady C? What do you think? Because the argument might be, Phil, that, look, he just finds out his dad's got cancer. You'd hop on a plane, wouldn't you?
Yeah, listen, Lady C might well be proved to be right, but I think just for once, we've got to give him a chance. At the end of the day, Charles has never hit back, and the reason he hasn't hit back is because he's wanted to leave the door open to him. So if Harry actually takes that up and tries to have some sort of meeting with him, I don't think we can criticise him for it. What I am surprised about is, having done that, Charles didn't see him for longer. He could have invited him up to Sandringham for a couple of days. They could have had a proper sit-down discussion. But the fact that they didn't does go to show there's still a lack of trust there.
Absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. Both of you, thank you very much. Thank you. Now, the King is continuing to recuperate at Sandringham today, holding his weekly audience with the Prime Minister as well. So it looks as though he's keeping an element of normality. So that was Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. Now, the PM is under fire after making a bit of a jibe whilst murdered trans teenager Brianna Jai's mother was allegedly watching
at Prime Minister's questions from the gallery. Should he apologise, or is it actually Keir Starmer who should apologise? And there is the liveliest newspaper review you will find anywhere on the telly. That's all coming your way when I reveal tomorrow's front pages, so stay tuned for that. Patrick Christys tonight, we're only on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Chris, what is the preferred way in which the police go about their business at the moment? There's these two strands of thinking. Evidence-based policing versus bobbies on the beat.
It's very, very difficult. The problem that police have got, basically, is that they're too thinly spread, and it's too much is expected of them. There's a long list, isn't it? Every month we hear police need to do more about this, police need to do more about that, and police do their best. They're overwhelmed with bureaucracy. I mean, when I was a young PC, if I took a shoplifter in, then I'd be in and out within an hour. You take a shoplifter in now, and you're doomed for the rest of your shift for 6 or 7 hours dealing with the bureaucracy. Police want to get back in those communities because community policing is really the core of policing. But such are the demands on their time at the moment, and the bureaucracy, and the fact that they are struggling now to retain experienced officers. People are hemorrhaging out of the police, and new recruits coming in haven't got that experience, and there's a good chance they may not stay anyway. So there's all sorts of problems. And for the Home Secretary to glibly say he wants more done, frankly, clearly shows he's got no understanding of the pressure police are under, and of course the constant criticism that they face across the board. Very rarely do you actually hear of police officers getting praised for acts of bravery or acts of compassion. So there's a problem with morale in the police force, and it's clearly a problem with the Home Secretary, who needs to get out there and talk to officers on the front line who frankly are struggling. And last night, of course, was a graphic example.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tomorrow's newspaper front pages for you right now. Let's do it. So, the Daily Telegraph, migration won't save UK from debt crisis. The OBR executive says that the bill for benefits must be cut and claimants brought back into work. The picture story there is of Prince William and Tom Cruise. Bit on Starmer abandoning the green pledge. Let's go to the Metro. King's cancer divides brothers. Duty calls Harry jets home to family in LA after a 24-hour trip. The scoop, if indeed it is true, from Lady C that you just heard here on GB News is that apparently the meeting lasted 12 minutes. Let's go to the Sun now. Prince back to work as Harry jets off. Top Sun they've gone for with that picture of Prince William and Tom Cruise, both wearing lovely tuxedos. I tell you what, William does look great in a tux, doesn't he? Let's go to The Guardian. Revealed, Moan told government she wouldn't benefit from PPE deal. So this is a leaked document which allegedly shows that the Tory peer denied a conflict of interest ahead of that £203 million contract. And there is a story on the front there, which is also on the front of the Mirror, which we'll go to now. Shame on you, tone-deaf Tories. This is what the Mirror says. PM's trans jibe as murdered Brianna's mum visits the Commons. OK, so that does lead us on to the story that I'm going to be talking about with my press pack now. We do, of course, have the wonderful Christys Calgie, senior political correspondent at the Daily Express, businessman and activist Adam Brooks, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Now, Rishi Sunak was accused of being insensitive at Prime Minister's questions when he mocked Starmer's stance on defining what a woman is, whilst the mother of a murdered trans teenager, Brianna Ghey, was listening in the Commons. Here it is.
Rich, Mr. Speaker, to hear about promises from someone who's broken every single promise he was elected on. I mean, I think I counted almost 30 in the last year. Pensions, planning, peerages, public sector pay, tuition fees, childcare, second referendums, defining a woman. Although in fairness, that was only 99% of a U-turn.
Of all the weeks to say that, when Brianna's mother is in this chamber, shame.
OK, well, Sunak later praised Esther Ghey, Brianna's mother, but did not apologise for his comments. However, Peter Spooner, Brianna's father, has demanded an apology from Sunak. Adam, should Rishi apologise?
No, I personally don't think he should. It wasn't a trans jibe. At the end of the day, there are many, many thousands, if not millions, of women out there that are annoyed that Keir Starmer couldn't define what a woman was or is. And that's very important, and that could put off a lot of voters. Now, we're in a Parliament chamber where we talk about policies and we talk about politics. I'm sorry, but we have to put facts sometimes over feelings, and I do not believe it was a jibe at the trans community. Okay. And I think the hysteria is being weaponised. I mean, I'm shocked that Starmer didn't get on his knee and start, you know, when he started his virtual signalling. Oh. He played it. Starmer is playing this and doing it very well.
Rebecca, Starmer is pearl clutching, his virtue signalling, he's playing it.
I think that was genuine. I really do think it was genuine from him. I sort of agree in the sense that you can't wrap debates around who is in the gallery so you don't hurt feelings. However, this was not a space to have a debate about trans issue. This was an unnecessary jibe that didn't need to go there. He had made his point. He didn't have to say it. And I don't think it was malicious from Sunak either. I just think it was gauche. And I think it kind of shows... He consistently shows a lack of sort of political nous. And this just wasn't... The other more polished politicians wouldn't have done that.
OK, Christian?
Do you know what? I actually agree with that. This wasn't a debate, you know, in which you have every right to have on trans issues and women's rights. That is still a debate that needs to be had in this country. But it was a throwaway attack that actually, whether Brianna Ghey's mother was in the chamber or not, and I know there's been some confusion about whether she was actually in the gallery at the time.
Well, was she? I mean, do we know?
My understanding is that she turned up too late to hear the actual comment, but she was there when a Labour MP then gave him the opportunity to apologise.
Right.
Okay. So I honestly wouldn't have made it. I think it lacked political intelligence and emotion. You know, just too soon after what's been quite a lot of coverage about a major transition.
Very quickly, Adam. Very quickly.
Rishi Sunak's been on record saying that women cannot have a penis. Yet we've got Starmer, obviously, that didn't know what a woman was. I think it's important that we know what a future PM's feelings are on such an important matter.
OK, all right. Now, sleepy Joe Biden made it onto our screens yesterday after mistaking Emmanuel Macron for the dead former French President Francois Mitterrand. But here he is again, struggling to string a coherent sentence together while forgetting the name of the terrorist organisation, Hamas.
There is some movement, and I don't want to, well, maybe choose my words. There's some movement. There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition, but yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas, but it seems to be a little over the top. We're not sure where it is.
I mean, that guy's just gone, hasn't he? He's just gone. You know, I actually seriously think it's cruel, to have this guy up there. He cannot run again, can he? I mean, I've heard a lot of chat about this today, not just today, the last couple of days especially, from people on the left and the right, saying that actually this guy is just not fit anymore. What do you think? But, look, we are just going to tell you a little bit now, in case you haven't heard, you've been living on the moon with your fingers on your ears, because we have got Rishi Sunak doing the old People's Forum for you. So a little bit later on, I'll show you how you can get in touch and try and be on that and pose these questions for you. I think that's what that QR code is on your screen now. It is. If you're watching us on telly, use that QR code, get yourself involved. But coming up, as dentist queues spark fury among Brits, is immigration to blame for squeezing healthcare? Is it time that we now actually front up to it and blame immigration for long queues at dentists? We'll be diving into this after my break and more newspaper front pages for you, including one on the Express, which is not to be missed on Reliably Informed. Patrick Christys tonight, only on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Francis, Just Stop Oil have in the past broken the law. I remember distinctly the Dartford crossing. That ended up with 2 jailed, I believe, if I remember correctly. Is it ever justified in your view?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I mean, I would have to say yes. I mean, we're trying to preserve my life, your lives, the lives of your family, and it's not just the planet that we're trying to protect, it's the lives of millions of people. And, you know, we know from history that we have to break the law in order to put pressure on the government and to be listened to.
No one would doubt your sincerity in your views. You genuinely believe in what you fight for. But there are others who think differently. For example, there are Islamist extremists who believe that people will go to hell unless they convert to Islam. They will sincerely, perhaps, break the law in order to force people to convert. In their view, they might be saving people's lives for eternity. There might be abortion activists who say that babies are being murdered and to save their lives we need to break the law to stop people having abortions. Why do you get to say that your moral conviction is the one that's right and other people's individual moral conviction are those that are wrong?
So what's really integral to the Just Stop Oil campaign is the fact that it is a non-violent campaign. That's what separates us from the examples that you've just given. We're absolutely dedicated non-violence, both as a tactic and as a principle. So though we might be breaking the law...
If individuals take it upon themselves to break the law for whatever their course is, surely the way that we decide what society wants in general is democratic and within the law.
Well, of course, we know also that protest is absolutely integral to maintaining and upholding a democracy, and in particular, non-violent protest. I mean, I really can't express to you how severe this situation is, and I'm sure you know this.
Yes, it's Patrick Christys tonight. I've got some more front pages for you, including an absolute stonker, but we'll start with this one, OK? So we are going off with the eye. Yes, the eye there, saying Viagra linked to reduced risk of Alzheimer's. All right, that's something, isn't it? Then we go to the Daily Mail. Thank you so much for all your kindness. That is what Prince William said to crowds as he attended an event this evening. And the Daily Express. Here we go. Has PM opened door to an amazing Boris Johnson comeback? Christian Cowkey, senior political correspondent at The Express, joins us now. What's this then?
This is hot off the press, isn't it? Well, this is a very interesting sort of diplomatic non-denial during an ITV interview in which Rishi Sunak speaks with pride of the work that he and Boris achieved together in government. And he specifically asked, would you have him back? And he doesn't say no. So I think, given the astonishing return of David Cameron, however long ago it was, it raises all sorts of questions. Could Boris come back in the Lords and the Commons? Could he go back into cabinet? My initial thought is actually, what does Boris Johnson owe the party at this point? They should be coming to him on bended knees to bring a bit of that magic that is so sorely needed in an election campaign. And after they stabbed him in the back, he better get offered a pretty good job.
He's got a lot of school fees to pay, though. And on Carrie's Instagram story, if you don't follow her, I really recommend it. It's a fascinating insight into their life. She was asking the other day for a hotel recommendation that wasn't too expensive. So clearly, you know, they're thinking about the purse strings in the Johnson household.
Well, look, Anna, what do you make of this? Boris Johnson, the possibility of a comeback.
Look,
I've
loved Boris and I've hated Boris over the last, 4 years. And I go up and down with how I feel about him. But at the end of the day, I don't think you have to be a rocket science to realise he's the only person that could stand as a Conservative leader and run an election close. They're annihilated with whoever they put up. So is Rishi Sunak trying to bring him in the team, just to get a few more votes and sell the Conservatives as something else? I don't know.
As you make the point, though, Christian, if Boris Johnson really feels like Rishi Sunak stabbed him in the back, why would he help this guy out? You've made your bed, lie in it.
Yeah, I mean, this might be Sunak's desperate attempt to claw back some points in the opinion polls. Of course, this doesn't cover Boris's response, which may be an emphatic no.
It's a two-word headline, though.
Yeah, exactly. Or two letters, as it might be. My personal bet is that actually, I think a few years into opposition, when the polls haven't shifted and Starmer's still irritatingly ahead, I think MPs will panic and they'll go, let's get a by-election, let's get Boris back.
If only there was someone. If only there was someone who could win us the Red Wall back. Now, look, spare a thought for the hundreds of people queuing for a much-coveted NHS appointment at a new dental practice in Bristol. It comes as 4 in 5 practices are now refusing to accept new patients in England. Sharp rise in tooth decay, especially apparently among school kids in recent years. Well, the Labour Party, they've assigned blame on Britain's Conservative Party, of course, saying the dentistry isn't working. Look, Christian, again, thousands of illegal immigrants arriving, thousands of legal migrants as well. Right? We can't surely just ignore rapid population growth when it comes to our crumbling public services.
I think there's been a myth that's continued for far too long in this country that immigrants pay for themselves. And, that may have been true 15 years ago when net immigration was at 200,000, right? Now it's at 600, 700,000 a year. A lot of them students, a lot of them codependents without jobs, and they are undoubtedly a net drain on public services. And this is a debate that we really need to wake up and have, because I think a lot of the prevailing establishment, the left, politicians, on the Conservative Party and in Labour and in the media, refuse to accept that actually, yes, immigration is draining public services.
Absolutely. And the front of the Telegraph, migration won't save UK from debt crisis. So this is the Office for Budget Responsibility saying that the bill for benefits must be cut and claimants must be brought back into work, and that, maybe relying on immigration shock horror, Adam, is not the best way of trying to sort our economy out.
Who knew? Who knew? And we speak about it and we're called racist. But going back to the NHS and dentistry and all that, it started with COVID. The health service became the COVID health service. Everything else went to the side, and we haven't recovered from that. So it's immigration and the response to COVID that has led to this.
I mean, there were already staggering problems with waiting lists before COVID hit, and there are staggering problems with finding an NHS dentist in areas that don't have particularly high levels of immigration. Not enough people are trained to become dentists. It's very, very similar to funded childcare places. Dentists don't make as much by treating non-private patients.
Absolutely.
There are a lot of reasons why. And at the moment, dentistry is more of a commercial proposition, which is, so I think to suggest that it's just immigration is a false equivalence, but also it's a self-own, because who was in charge when this immigration thing happened?
Yeah, that is true. And seriously, if you go into dentistry now, you're not working in the NHS, are you? Let's be honest. You're driving a Porsche. Anyway, right. You are.
And doing Botox as well.
And doing Botox as well. Yes, there we go. Well, they're not for me. Anyway, right. Now, it's all gone up in smoke for the creative Frenchman Richard Pleud. I'm fluent. Who spent a painstaking 8 years building a 23-foot-tall replica of the Eiffel Tower out of matchsticks, only to find out that his dreams had been flamed when the Guinness World Records rejected his entry because he used matches that were not commercially available and had been changed beyond recognition from their original form. So he used the wrong matches. 8 years of your life wasted. But Monsieur Pleud is not going down without a fight. No, he's labelled the decision, I won't do the accent, disappointing, frustrating, incomprehensible and very much not fair play. So, there we go. 8 years of a Frenchman's life completely down the toilet. Oh, well. Now it's time to reveal today's greatest Britannic Union jackass. Christian, who's your greatest Briton?
That's a very good question, my friend.
Do you want to make it the matchstick man?
I got it. Right, my greatest Briton is Liz Truss, for one simple reason, which is that without her, my week would have been a complete write-off. You know, let's be honest, I'm not a royal reporter. The Express loves its royal stories. There wasn't much of a politics game in town, and she came along and gave us some headlines, and she kept me busy.
All right, go on, Adam.
Mine is Rachel McLean MP for wanting foreign criminals out of our country and to strengthen our borders.
OK, go on, Rebecca.
Mine is philosopher and poet Taylor Swift, who has announced that her new album is dropping on the 19th of April. I will
She's
obviously...
always got an album out.
Yes, that's why we love her. Also, it's actually been nearly 2 years, and I've had a very significant breakup since then, so I need it.
Oh, OK. Well, sorry, I would like to point out I was already laughing before Rebecca.
So I was talking about her divorce.
Nothing about her. Right, OK, Rachel McLean is today's greatest Briton for, well, just saying the obvious, really, which is we need to support foreign criminals before they can go on to commit more crimes. Right, who is your union jackass, Christian?
I remember this one. This is Susanna Reid, who, who went beyond what I think is acceptable for broadcast impartiality this week when she told a cabinet minister that apparently Labour do have a plan on immigration. Their plan is to smash the gangs, which, and she had to then clarify that I'm not a Labour Party spokesman. Well, forgive me, that sounded pretty similar to Labour Party spokesperson. It's like saying Labour do have a policy on the NHS, it's to stop people dying. OK, brilliant. Right, we'll move on then. No questions, my lord.
All right, OK, go on, Adam.
Mine is the arrogant and despicable London Mayor, Sadiq Khan. He's invested 150 million in secret technology that could deliver pay-per-mile road charging. Myself and the Together Declaration warned of this when the ULEZ got expanded out to the
pay-per-mile road
boroughs,
charging. All right, OK, go on.
Mine is Greg Wallace. Who gave an interview about his average Saturday in which he doesn't mention that he has a child until 1:30 p.m. in the morning. He wakes up, he reads his book, he goes to the gym, takes a meeting, goes to a harvester, and then in the middle of the day mentions he has a 4-year-old son, then explains that he didn't really want to have more children, but oh well, he's got this son.
Right.
It's unbelievable. It's freely available on the internet. Find it. It's mad.
All right, OK, today's Union Jackass. It's Sadiq Khan. Yeah. There we go. Why not? Why not? Right, well, look, can I just say a massive thank you to my wonderful panel, Christian, Adam and Rebecca. Really, really enjoyed tonight's show. Please do go back and watch a couple of those big scoops that we had right at the start about this remarkable story of an Afghan asylum seeker apparently managing to con his way right to the top of our intelligence services. And, of course, that very moving interview with the mother of Barnaby Webber, who was sadly killed by the Nottingham knife monster. Up next, it's Headliners. Until next time, keep fighting the good fight.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GBNews.
Hello again and welcome to the latest forecast from the Met Office. I'm Aidan McGiven. Cold in the north for the next 24 hours, mild and wet in the south, in between the risk of disruptive snow in places. Here's the setup as we end the day. We've got clear spells across northern parts of the UK, further snow showers into the north of Scotland, a widespread frost across many parts of northern England, Scotland and Northern Ireland. But further south, rain, wind and milder air arrives into parts of South Wales, southern England, some heavy and persistent rain first thing. Mild air in the south clashes with cold air further north. The band of rain in between turns increasingly wintry as we go through Thursday morning. So across mid and North Wales, parts of North Midlands into Northern England and then Northern Ireland, we're going to see rain at lower levels, perhaps some sleet in some parts at lower levels, but certainly some disruptive snow over any hills above 100, 200 metres. And for parts of North Wales, the Peak District into the South Pennines, the risk of very disruptive snow, 25 centimetres and some freezing rain in